Hello and welcome to Inside Edition to discuss national, regional and international issues in depth. Violent extremism and the underlying forces of radicalization are among the most pervasive challenges of our time. While violent extremism is not confined to any age, sex, group or community, young people are particularly vulnerable to the messages of violent extremists and terrorist organizations. The youth equation holds the key to the future of many countries, especially those experiencing tensions or emerging from conflict. There are some 1.2 billion young people in the world today between the ages of 15 and 24 years old, with many societies featuring large bodies of unemployed youth lacking education, skills and prospects. Our main focus today is dealing with extremist ideologies through education and media. We will be discussing the matter with Dr. Shaikh Khalid bin Khalifa, the Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees and Executive Director of Isa Cultural Center. But first, let's take a look at a video illustration showing the importance of preventing violent extremism through education. It is based on testimonies of people who once engaged in promoting or perpetrating extreme violence. This video also draws the attention to some of the drivers of violent extremism, to the role of education in preventing violent extremism, and to educational approaches recommended by the UNESCO.
We see the rise of violent extremism striking societies across the world. We see citizens turning weapons against their own. But why do people engage in such actions? No one is born a violent extremist. Violent extremists are made. They're fueled.
We were just brought up to say that the Protestants were different from us, and they were constantly putting Catholics down, and we were carrying that sort of stories from your parents and your uncles to say that as Catholics we weren't getting treated well, and that's why we're always hungry and cold. And by the time you're 16, you've just grown into never getting to know who you were beating up. We had the army there as well and the police, so we had like 3 groups that we didn't like. They were all fighting for Queen and country, and so we're there fighting just to get our rights, whatever it was.
He was always kind of different, and when he was in school, he would wear a bandana on his head, and he had a long tail that came down his back. One day, he got attacked in the playground, and they cut off his tail. And that was the first and only time he was ever bullied.
I was just traumatized beyond traumatized, and I'm sure some seeds were planted by that incident. A reinforcement of the idea that violence is kind of just a fact of life and a way of life. You either run with it or you get run over by it. I don't want to be in that position again.
If I look at the reasons behind me joining this particular radical group, I was unable to think for myself because of the way I was controlled as a child. This is probably my way of wanting to be controlled again, right? I couldn't think for myself. I had to be the follower. I needed a leader. I needed someone to be in control.
There is no single pathway for radicalization or speed at which it happens. It is a combination of socioeconomic, psychological, and institutional factors that lead to violent extremism. Push factors drive individuals to violent extremism, such as marginalization, inequality, discrimination, the feeling of being persecuted, poor education, denial of rights, and other grievances. Pull factors attract individuals to violent extremism, such as well-organized violent extremist groups that provide services, revenue, and employment. They also claim to offer a place to belong and a supportive environment. Contextual factors provide a breeding ground for violent extremist groups, such as fragile states, the lack of rule of law, corruption, and criminality. Security is often the first step to curbing violent extremism, but it is not a long-term solution. We need prevention to tackle the roots of violent extremism, and education is key to prevention. It can redress inequalities that fuel violent extremism and it helps learners to make informed decisions and engage responsibly. Action is needed at all levels of education to develop an effective prevention strategy. We need inclusion for students to develop a sense of belonging and respect for diversity. Resilience to build students' capacities to overcome hardships and challenges. We need safety and well-being in schools so all learners feel safe and supported. Procedures to appropriately respond to the needs of persons at risk. And finally, partnerships are needed between education institutions and the community at large for effective and comprehensive interventions. As educators, we have a key role to play to prevent violent extremism. Let us not miss this opportunity to make a difference.
Welcome back. With us here in the studio is Dr. Shaikh Khalid bin Khalifa Al-Khalifa. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here to talk about a very important issue.
Yes. Doctor, one of the things that we just saw was basically things, images or examples of how extremist ideologies pull in the youth. Now, extremist ideologies aren't new. They've always been there for tens of even hundreds of years. But nowadays they have widely spread because of the movement of technology, because of the mass media that is available to everybody, from the youngest child to the oldest child. What is helping these ideologies spread, and how are they attracting people?
In fact, as you said, truly that extremism has been there throughout the ages. For a long time, societies have suffered from extremism and further on terrorism. But adding to what you have already said, and the program as well, that the factors that affecting, or the causes that affecting terrorism and extremism, as stated clearly, economic factors are there, social factors are there, education, very important factor. But I would like to add as well, in recent years, that we have seen state-sponsored terrorism. Yes. Extremism cannot turn into terrorism unless there's a political factor behind it.
A strong
that pushed
backbone.
it. Yeah. So the idea of to be extreme or extremist in one of the ideas that you have as a person in society, that can be lived with for a long time. You can live with it for a long time without affecting, and you are not, and without turning yourself into terrorism and violence.
Yeah.
In fact, what we have recently witnessed in the last years, for instance, that the governments that have supported and turned these ideas that are available in societies like sectarianism or religious ideas, Islamic movements, they use those and turn them into violence and extremist, violence, as I said. So what the problem here is, unless we understand these factors very well and try to solve them through the proper means. I mean proper means that it's not only the society, the governments, but also the societies as well to fight.
Yes.
As I said, media, one of the factors that have been used to, or tools that have been used to promote the extremist ideas.
Doctor, coming back to the same point, I just want to get your opinion on this. Now, People always think of education as something that will strengthen a person's personality, but that's not really the fact. If you have a weak character and you have an education, you might join groups, as we see like in Daesh. They made a whole state where they have doctors, architects, and engineers. These are people with education, but because of the weak character, for whatever reason the weakness is, whether it is from young childhood, whether it is some kind of monetary problem that they might have, because money is always an issue when it comes to these things, they still went into these ideology of terrorism, and they convinced themselves that they are doing their work, which they have been educated in, sometimes in some of the best schools in the world for a cause that is actually non-existent. It's not an Islamic cause, it's not even a religious cause. So do you agree with me when we say that basically weakness is what makes them accept these ideologies?
It's true. In fact, if you look at into the problems of 2011, the chaotic situation that we have witnessed, and what was called, so-called the Arab Spring, or whatever. From that we learned that Arab societies, in fact, have illiteracy. Illiteracy doesn't mean that they don't read or write. They don't understand the ideas. They don't understand the environment that they are living in. So such ideas penetrated into those societies. I'm not talking about Syria, Damascus. I'm talking about the suburbs. That's how it started. It did not start from the capitals. It started around those areas are very vulnerable and very open for any ideas, especially if they have elements like sectarianism or religious or abuses, whatever the causes are. But they in fact showed that these societies were very, very background, very unaware of what they have and what they are going to witness. So society, and it also shows that these societies were closed societies. Open societies did not have this problem. Societies that are exposed to the world, exposed to the West and other countries, they were immune from any attacks from outside. But societies that were closed, especially look at Libya. What happened in Libya, because that society was closed during Gaddafi period. Look at Tunisia, it did not work, because Tunisia was much open to the West, and we know that the relationship with France, at least, it was open. So the Libyan society was open and could not be penetrated. Look into other Egypt, for instance. It was very open society, so it did not work. It did not succeed. So what we learned from 2011 that closed societies really suffered from our, as you said earlier, weak to face such intervention from outside.
Yes. People that are weak usually find a cause for them to believe in. Our next question comes into that. The ideologies are really easy to be accepted by especially the younger generations, because younger generations need role models, they need someone to follow and so on. What is your view on this?
Younger generations are, or let's talk about youth. Youth are the targets. Youth are the targets to be recruited at first stage. They are the targets to be to turn into terrorists, and in the end jihadists. So the whole idea of talking about terrorism is really dealt with young people only. And that's the problem with our societies, because in our societies, the majority of people in our societies are youth. And unfortunately, we did not, I'm not talking about Bahrain here, I'm talking about the Arab world as a whole, even in Europe, in fact. That's how we see recruitment of young people from Europe was much easier. Of course, they used very high tech for that. As I said earlier, these ideas cannot be promoted and cannot be turned into violence and terrorism unless it is sponsored or pushed and financed by a state or a government.
Exactly.
And we have noticed that, and we have a lot of proofs for that.
Yes.
Regionally, I don't want to mention any country, but regionally, yes, we do have governments that have supported, financed, and planned for terrorism.
Yes.
And countries are suffering for that. So the targets are young people, as I said, and the means and the tools to reach them, the very advanced tools. Unfortunately, they are not, as governments in the area, we are not being able to match such very advanced tools that have been used against our children.
Yes, yes.
So you see, today, when you talk about education, you talk about an education that you have bounded by walls in the school for limited hours of the day. But the rest of the hours of the day, our children are open
to a different world.
He is with you at home. He is in his bedroom, but connected to somewhere in USA or
exactly.
Europe or Far East.
Yes.
And those people are. I mean, the terrorist organizations are very well organized. They know what to talk. They know the exact words and what to attract the young generations. And we have read a lot of material regarding the way of recruitments,
yes.
and we have noticed that they use different languages to different societies.
Yes.
When they talk to a girl in Europe, they talk differently than to a boy in Europe.
True.
And to different persons in the Arab world. So they have different languages, they have studied psychologically the right way to approach young people. And that's how you have found that they have succeeded, and hundreds of young people from Europe, and they advertised it as well, because for our children, our young people, when they hear and see European students and young people coming from Europe all the way to fight in Syria or in an Arab state or an Islamic state, they in fact say we're much better to do so.
Yeah.
Why don't we do it? Why do we leave it for others? So as I said, they talk in different languages. True. To different sects of societies, and as I said earlier, it is the target of these organizations are the youth. Yeah. And
unfortunately,
we, as I said, our education system has not fulfilled all the times and gaps that our young people have. So from these gaps that they could have in fact affect our students and our youth.
Yes. It's very important, I think, at this point to emphasize something. A lot of people hear the word extremism and terrorist ideologies, and they immediately think religions. It's not just religions. These ideologies also pertain to civil wars, to civil conflicts, to conflicts within countries, between governments and governments. What can you tell us about that, the fact that this is not only a religious cause, it's also a political cause that people think they're doing right by?
In history, we know that terrorism is a tool that have been used by many extremists throughout history, and overall, they are supported by ideas. Yeah. These ideas don't need to be Islamic or religious or sects. These ideas are the ideas that you deal with them and take the extreme of any idea to be imposed on others. So the sense of respecting others' human rights or rights it doesn't exist in this field.
Yes.
So what I think what we are talking about here is really the extremism supported by religious or ideas. It doesn't mean that has to be an Islamic or Christian or Hindu. Unfortunately, throughout the media, they imposed on they focus on religious. If you're talking about today, what's happening in the Arab world,
yes,
mostly really, or in Europe of attacks by bombs or terrorist attacks,
or even
in Europe,
Myanmar.
or that's true. That's by other sects and other religions.
Exactly.
But you cannot, regard what happened in USA in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Over talking about over 500 people injured, and I think it's about 50 or 60 killed, in cold blood, without the person doesn't know them as well.
Exactly.
So
it wasn't religious. It wasn't anything.
It was no.
It was just a random
we still don't know what was the cause.
But it was a terrorist attack.
It was a terrorist attack.
Yes. Yes.
So as I said, he might have some ideas. He might be some ideas, and took them to very extreme. And the history of USA, in fact, a lot of attacks that had happened in USA in the last few years, they were not, in fact, linked to any religion.
Yes.
Some of them just sects, just ideas, and have nothing to do with any nor Christian or Islamic.
Well, one of the main things that helps in raising awareness is education. Education is one of the most valuable tools, actually, to raise awareness in the younger generation for a better understanding of how to deal with their world, how to deal with their peers. How do you value the present education curricula around the world in serving this purpose?
I think, of course, in Bahrain we have done a lot to our curricula, and it is successful, although that always you can say that it can be better, and cannot stop at this stage. Yeah. But I think it's not only that. I think the means, the tools to reach the minds of the students is the main element to really prevent and immune our students.
Yes.
We cannot immune them with just a curricula and a good teacher, but we need, in fact, to penetrate into their minds, use the same tools that have been used by Daesh, other terrorist organizations, the same tools to combat these ideas. As I said earlier, it is not only the walls of the school or the classrooms or the teacher and the curriculum. We have to go beyond that. I think our education system has to move into another stage where it can use very high tech and media to reach our students. Fill that gap. Don't let the young generation to have a lot of time, free time that can be left for others to use or to fill.
Yeah.
Therefore, I think we have to do something about and this is not only in Bahrain I'm talking about the Arab world as a whole, Gulf states. It's not enough that what we give the students in the class, they go home and they forget about it. They can, once they got examined, they forget all the day. Yeah. So I think we have to live with them very long summer vacation. You can make education entertainment.
Yes.
You have to go through these channels to keep in touch with the minds of the young generation.
Yeah.
As I said, it has to fill the gap.
Yes. One of the things that Bahrain has introduced into the curricula is national education, or national strength education, as we say, and the citizenship and human and human rights principles were integrated into the curricula. Now, as you said, it should be integrated in a way where students will have fun. And usually this fun comes on the Bahrain National Day, because then that's actually the time where they connect them together. But the National Day comes one time a year. Is there another way to basically promote this nationalism and this human rights activism that pertains to Bahrain itself in students, other than just giving them the National Day and not connecting it with anything else that is fun for them?
Yes, in fact, especially for young generation, they are very attracted by games, electronic games, and games on the internet, and so on. So we have to use such a media or link to promote these ideas of human rights, respecting others, well-being, well-living in an open society, respecting other people's ideas, religious ideas and religions and sects and so on. So that's one of the ideas that you can use through games. We can actually keep the children throughout summer, throughout their vacations, other days that they have vacations, or at different times of the day itself. We can, in fact, keep them engaged through entertainment. They're playing and happy with it. They will, have that ideas and deep in their mind, and they will not forget it.
Yes,
it will be settled in their mind. So this is what I'm saying. It's just one of the ideas that we can do through, and this is an education. Today, education not only in the book.
Yes.
Today, I have my children reading books from their mobile.
Exactly.
And I cannot actually tell them don't use the mobile. Now they are using the mobile 24 hours a day, and I cannot say no, because I know that they are reading a book or a novel or
interesting forms
or articles. So as I said, we have to jump into a new stage of education.
Yes. Actually, Bahrain is so vast with history and information that I know that a while back in the summer, especially last summer, I remember one of the private institutions or groups like the Girl Scouts or so on, what they did was that they took a bunch of students, Bahraini and non-Bahrainis, and took them all over the beaches to clean the beaches. And while they were doing that cleaning, they were actually giving them information. It was Balaj al-Jazar. They were telling them that here the first shipment of oil went to Saudi Arabia, and from here this and this happened. So they started connecting an activity, a social activity of cleaning up the beach, with the information. It made the place more precious. We have in Bahrain so many places. We have the Tree of Life, we have Jabal Dukhan. All of them have an actual history behind them that not a lot of people know about. But when you go visit the place and actually be told this history, there becomes a connection between you and the ground that you're standing on.
It's true. It's a sort of workshop that they were organizing. I think this is one of the ideas that we have to promote. The curricula that we have in human rights and in human rights and history and our culture and behavior, they are very good. In fact, of course, they are excellent, as I said. But the problem is we need other tools. This is one of the tools that we can have. Media, using a lot of media. It's not enough to use media in the classroom. It has to be throughout the day, throughout vacations, throughout the year. And I think, in Bahrain we have a very open society, thanks to God. We respect our others' rights. And as we all know that we have in this society living peacefully and well-being, with others, whether that your neighbor is a Hindu or a Christian or Shiite or Sunnis or whatever. We have been, by the way, I lived in Manama. I was brought up in Manama, in the center of Manama. You know, just are surrounded by a Sunni mosque, many Husseiniat or Ma'atim, of the Shia sect, and very close to the the church.
Yeah, Sacred Church, Sacred Heart.
Very, very close to the temples of Hindu or Judaism. So we are all surrounded, and we were brought up, and we really, in fact, respect all the, not only respect, but participate in the good occasions, happy occasions and celebrations of other religions and other sects. And we never thought that there's a difference between us. So this society, in fact, is very unique in the area that has all these sects living together for a long time. Only in the last, of course, as I said earlier, state-sponsored or government-sponsored terrorism planned to affect our society by intervening into our societies, into this good living.
We were able to fight back in many ways, and one of those ways that we were able to fight back, and you were a part of the delegation that when we went to Los Angeles, basically we fought back by proving to the whole world. We in Bahrain know that we have a coexisting society, but now the whole world knows that it is possible, and it started off in Bahrain.
It's true. I was so pleased to see it, successfully implemented, and the effect was great. In fact, that was a very, very, very successful event, and it was well chosen. The place, I mean, to have it in Los Angeles as a center of human rights and the
Wiesenthal Center as our guest.
It's true. So I was very, very pleased in that. I think this is the message that we carry. We are all ambassadors of our country, and our mission is really to promote for peace and living together in good societies without any problems. So Bahrain is I think Bahrain deserves, thanks to His Majesty the King, he gave this to Bahrain, and Bahrain deserves it.
Yes, alhamdulillah. Dr. Sheikh Khalid, now coming to you personally, you have always been in the spotlight fighting for the rights of education and proper education in Bahrain. During your participation at the Rolo Development, Education and Media in Fighting Extremism, which was a conference that took place in Jordan at that time, you said that recent incidents in Arab region showed the systematic ignorance and weakness of educational systems. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, in fact, I was talking about our societies, the societies that did not compact or stand against the incoming terrorist ideas and interventions in our societies. As I said earlier, I was talking about Syria, Libya was as well. So we discovered that these societies are not having a good education system.
Yes.
There was no awareness of a very important issue, and that's of course the value of what you have in the society. This is the problem. Now most of this society, they know what they lost, and they know what they don't have now.
Yes.
That's the problem. So I was concentrating on the reason and causes of this. Of course, education become number one. For young people, I was talking about hope.
Yeah.
You see, we have to give our youth the hope for the future. Without hope, they are open to any attacks from outside. They can be penetrated very easily. They can be washed, brain, and brainwashed or so on. So I think we must work hard together as societies, as individuals, as governments, to give young people the hope for future. Don't because if they lose hope, if you talk about students in the universities, if they lose hope in the university and education, they lose hope in the future. Why do that? They do this one because they, in fact, they think that why should they study if they are not going to find a job?
Exactly.
If they're going to stay home. So it's better to stay home from now than waiting to finish all these years and then stay home. So these ideas should be really cleared off their minds, and we have to create hopes in the minds of young people so that it can be they can be immune and they can be protected.
Yes.
You see, all of us, if we don't have hope, we cannot live really.
Yes.
So what about young people? Young people really need much more hope for the future than what we give them now. As I noticed that we have not done this, in this regard much. So I think we need to do a lot of this as a government, as individuals, as even as parents, as societies. As parents, always encourage your young people for the future, always create this image of good future for them. Let them live for that. Otherwise, they would just stop having interest in life and open for any attacks from outside that talks about heaven with you know, I don't want to say
I know what you mean.
you know how they attract those young people, you know.
Yeah. One of the very important things that Bahrain has done in order to fight extremism and give young people and the younger generations a chance was provide such a thing as the Vision 2030. How do you value the coordination between Bahrain and most of the Gulf countries, the other GCC and Arab countries, in spreading the awareness? Now we know Saudi Arabia has a similar program, also the 2030, and the concept of both of these programs was we want to make a better world with more jobs and more information for the generations that are coming up now, the ones that we're afraid that they will go and be pulled into these ideologies. So just give me your comment on how Bahrain is working with the GCC and Arab countries in spreading awareness of combating terrorism on the levels of media, education and economy.
In the GCC countries, of course, this has been done on two stages. One is on the government level. The government have through ministries of education, information, and others have a lot of programs that targeting young people. On the other side, we have the societies and individuals that through conferences, meetings, and symposiums and lectures. I myself last year attended a conference, a very important conference about youth in Dubai, and most of the participants were from the Gulf GCC countries. The theme of the conference was a way of protecting the young people from the evils of terrorism and extremism. So this is another way. A lot of societies here in Bahrain, we have arranged, managed as well some conferences, lectures, and all, and invited people from experts and people who are of interest in this issue from the Gulf states. You know. So this is done on both ways. Official government and non-official through societies and individuals. Of course, as Arab countries as well, we have a lot of link now in Isa Cultural Center with Egypt, with of course GCC countries plus Egypt, Jordan, Morocco. These countries that are facing some of the extremism and terrorism. So we have a lot of work to be done, doing together. some of the centers in Saudi Arabia. In fact, we are participating with them in some of the studies that to see the origin of Daesh and the means of recruiting young people and the effect and how to combat these things with us. So the links are very, very important, very close, necessary. And I think we have done a lot as individuals and society, in the society, and as governments here.
Yes.
But still, as I said earlier, still we need much more.
Inshallah, we will. During the international conference, Internet and the radicalization of youth, preventing, acting and living together, that took place in Quebec, UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, Ahmad AlHendawi, shared a message on the ways to counter radicalization of youth leading to violent extremism. He called for a constructive dialogue and stresses the need to engage young people in the consolidation of peace by recalling UN Resolution 2250, which urges member countries to increase representation of youth in decision-making at all levels.
The current generation of young people is the largest the world has ever known. And while this young population offers a tremendous opportunity for development and economic growth, still, more than 600 million young people live in fragile and conflict-affected settings. Young people are often negatively portrayed either as victims or as perpetrators of violence. And rarely they are recognized for their essential role as influential peace builders or invited to participate in the processes that influence their daily lives and their futures. The good news here that in December 2015, the United Nations Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security. This historic resolution urged member states to increase representation of youth in decision-making at all levels, recognizing that the threat to stability and development is posed by radicalization affects in the first place young people. So Resolution 2250, as we call it at the UN, ensures that young people are able to meaningfully participate in peace processes and conflict resolution. A month after the adoption of that resolution, the Secretary General presented his plan of action to prevent violent extremism. The plan promotes innovative practices to address the drivers of violent extremism and build support towards the rejection of violence. For example, the plan includes provisions to bring together young people, heads of international organizations, and heads of UN agencies in the discussion against violence extremism at the national, regional, and global levels. And the implementation of this plan will give youth a greater voice in decision-making at the local, national, regional, and international levels. The voices of young people need to be amplified to offset the rise of youth radicalization and extremism, particularly online. In order to translate Resolution 2250 into action, we must do more to invest in young people as community mobilizers and preventers of violent extremism and radicalization. So your conference is a great example of the existing initiatives to highlight the role of young people as messengers of peace within this broader context. Young people are important partners in peacemaking, policymaking, and decision-making. They also play a key role in preventing radicalization and ensuring lasting peace, because young women and men are the leaders and change makers of today, not only of the future. Call upon your government to stick to their commitments. I call on young people to inspire and empower your peers to stand up against violent extremism. Start constructive dialogue in your communities and join me in calling for collective action in ending violent extremism and including young people into meaningful and healthy dialogue. Internet is a powerful tool that our generation is privileged to have, and we need to fully utilize this tool in order to promote peace, tolerance, acceptance, and coexistence between all.
Mr. Ahmad AlHendawi, who is the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth to the UN. What he's talking about and the things that government should initiate are things that have already been initiated in Bahrain very well.
Yes.
Can you give us your comments on that?
Yes, in fact, we have noticed that, especially children being used in violent acts, in wars. They were trained to attack. Not only this, but we have seen children that carried bombs and thinking that they would go to heaven if they in fact be jihadists. So the problem here is not only these extremist or terrorist organizations such as the Daesh, because we know what Daesh is, but the problem here is some state-owned organizations, or like in Yemen, for instance, talking about groups of Houthis, for instance. They have recruited very young people as something like 10 or 15 years old, 12 years old, to carry guns and fight.
Yes.
Of course, they will be killed as well. Not only that, they will carry this into their, this is a way and means of living for them in the future. So this is the new generation of Yemen in the future, which means that the Yemeni future, especially depending on such young people, is very gloomy. So I think what he's talking about really is at international level, we should in fact come back and work together to stop using children. Here in Bahrain, we have noticed that those radical groups using very young people in violent acts and burning tires or attacking private and government properties, destroying cars, burning items or cars or whatever. So very young people are, and they know that these young people will be caught. And thanks to God, our government and our security services are understanding to this point, and they have dealing with them very softly. And once they are caught, they're taken to rehab centers. In other countries, they would have been shot on the spot. Thanks that we understand this, and once you have them in rehab, these societies or groups, terrorist groups, would call into international organizations that young people are in jails and children are in jails. The problem that the other side don't see, who are using the young people or the children and put them into this situation.
Yes.
The responsibility really lies on such organizations, and I think international organizations should understand that they have to go deep into the causes of things rather than into the results of any act or of any act of violence.
Exactly. We know for a fact, I just want to add before we go to our next question, Bahrain has developed even educational systems and information for the parents of children, because it's not always that the parents actually know about this information, but the fact that people have to keep in mind that his own child could be going into these ideological thoughts, these terrorist thoughts, without them knowing about it. If you think, no, my child will not do that, be more involved in their life, be more involved in their education, be more involved in their friends and so on. Bahrain has provided educational and support groups for people who might think maybe my child or my daughter or my son is involved in something, but I'm not sure. They teach you how to basically find these trigger signs. So do you agree on these programs being important for parents?
Very important. I think we should promote much more programs like this, and keep, as I said, as I said earlier, that it's not the school only itself, but it has to go outside, has to reach the parents, and I think we have a very good communication system here between the government schools as well as the private schools with the parents. And today, fortunately, that we are using not only the internet, but today I've seen groups of parents on WhatsApp, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, discussing all the. So I know some of the one class of students, their parents are all having one group discussing the behavior of other students and other friends of their. So you can sit and listen what they have discussing in the classroom. So you are really bringing the parents into the classroom, and seeing what they have of their children and how they are behaving. Not only just the workshops and homeworks and other educational materials, but also what are the relationship between the students in the classroom. So that's what we're talking about. This is organized individually. These parents have their friends in the classroom, and like they're spreading the relationship outside the bigger circle. So this is a very important development that we have witnessed. Of course, schools have done a lot to do that through internet, and now, as I said, even individually through WhatsApp and other means of communication.
It's a very strong support group. And now coming back to our topic on establishing a national committee, establishing a national committee and developing a media strategy to fight extremism and terrorism are two of the conferences we talked about, the Youth Against Extremism Conference recommendations. Do you think that such an approach is effective?
Yes, we have this recommendation from our last conference that we recommended that a national committee should be established, and we believe that this committee should be of government, staff or personnel, plus the societies in Bahrain. So getting them together to work towards preventing any intervention from outside by terrorist groups, especially protecting our children. That's we have reached into that conclusion because we've noticed that individuals sometimes organize lectures, talk on different levels about this, and some of them are experts, and some of them are very, very interested in the sense that became experts in the field. Some of them are government lectures. We have seen centers that are organizing conferences in Bahrain and outside Bahrain. So in that case, we really need that to gather all these elements and activities to consolidate their effort and become stronger in facing this, imported ideas of terrorists and terrorism.
We've almost come to the end of our show. Doctor, your final comments on basically how televised media can contribute to educating the audience about the dangers of extremism.
As we have been talking mainly today on the youth and the importance of the youth in our society. I think not only in Bahrain but in most of the Arab countries, teenagers don't have enough of TV and media for themselves. If you look at our televisions, as I said again, not in Bahrain, I'm talking about Arab countries as a whole, you'll find children programs in the morning or certain hours, very limited, cartoons or whatsoever, and then you find the adults. In between, there's a gap. The teenage, people don't get what they should get. I think reversibly, if we talk about this, I think they deserve a TV by themselves because they are the majority in our societies. So I think we really should work hard to do that because this is the future. These are the future. And I would think, imagine one day that we should have, whether in Bahrain or other countries, that we should have a TV run by young people to understand what they need. The presenters, all the TV from A to Z should be run and targeting only the young people. Then they will feel that they are not ignored. Because we have to recognize them, their importance. Like this, young people, they think that, especially the teenager, they think that they are not important for the society. That
so they go to social
own.
Media for importance.
That's the problem. So I think we really need to take care much more about our teenagers. Try to fill their time with good things. The problem that if you don't give them at this stage and show them your culture, your values of the society, they will take it from others, from other means, and some of the means are bad as if they take it from Daesh or whatever. So I think they need a special TV for themselves.
Agreed. Thank you very much, Dr. Sheikh Khalid bin Khalifa, the Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees and Executive Director of Isa Cultural Center, for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we would like to thank you, dear viewers, for watching, and see you again next week in another episode of Inside Edition.